It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Star Wars podcast. On the show this week, The Bad Batch. What just happened? This was a show that I was looking forward to, but not one that I would necessarily say that I was excited for. Needless to say, I am now. So we'll dive into that with now the opening 75-minute episode on May the 4th, Star Wars Day, and this past Friday's episode. So we'll get into that. Some Andor set leaks are available for viewing on Reddit. We'll talk a bit about that. Watch The Force Awakens over the weekend and have some comments on a rewatch, and it kind of relates to the universal praise The Bad Batch is getting. Plus, of course, as always, your listener feedback. So glad you're with the show. Once again this week, let's dive right into it.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My nerd world.
Just let it in.
Again, I'm so glad you're with the show this week. I am your host, John Justice, broadcasting from a galaxy far, far away. Also known as my office here in my bedroom, and I still had some of the background music going. I'm glad you're with the show this week. Really excited about this show, and really excited about the show because I get to talk about The Bad Batch. So before we get into that, though, I do want to talk a little May 4th. Star Wars Day. I have conflicted feelings over Star Wars Day. Most of it comes down to, I think, my need to change my expectations. I always enjoyed May the 4th. I love the fact, and I talked about this on last week's show, I love the fact that this was a day embraced by the fans, and simply because of the play on words of May the 4th be with you, may the Force be with you. May, obviously, being the month that the original Star Wars was released back in 1977. And it's always just kind of been a fun day for fans. There's another meme that I love every year that has to do with May, and it is it's the Justin Timberlake from NSYNC in the song It's Gonna Be Me. It sounds like when he sings, it's gonna be May. So every May 1st, I will send gifts, GIFs, however you want to pronounce it, to friends, with the little, Justin Timberlake from that video saying it's going to be May. See, I just dig that. I think it's fun, right? And I always thought Star Wars Day was fun. And now Disney has kind of embraced this. And they did a lot of really cool things, right? So apart from the merchandising angle of it, a lot of specials on Star Wars items that you can buy, if you went into the Disney Plus app, they commissioned or had it on file a bunch of really interesting and amazing artwork. And it may still be available on the Disney Plus app, but they went through and they updated the backgrounds when you went to click in and watch a particular show, any of the Saga movies or any of the, the Mandalorian, right? You could go in there and they had original artwork, and they had a really interesting banner, original piece of art up on the Disney Plus page. And there were a lot of people, including myself, that had an expectation that, maybe we'll get some announcements on May 4th. I mean, since Disney is embracing this and actually turning it into the official Star Wars Day, my expectation was that we were going to get something beyond The Bad Batch. Thinking back now that it's Sunday when I'm recording this and we didn't get anything, it seems pretty clear that they were focusing on promoting The Bad Batch. Now, that being said, I was slightly disappointed on May 4th, on Star Wars Day, that we didn't receive any major announcements, but At the same time, they did launch a 75-minute opening episode, which was obviously a couple of episodes combined of The Bad Batch for us. So we got brand new Star Wars content on May the 4th, including the episode that we got on Friday. So that being said, after having watched The Bad Batch, I was more than happy with May the 4th, because The Bad Batch was something that I didn't know I needed in my life. One of my favorite quotes of all times comes from Steve Jobs, from Apple. And I don't know if Steve said it or if somebody said it about Jobs, but the comment was, and the comment is, Apple provides products that you didn't know you couldn't live without. Now, if you're a Mac person like me, right, you get that, right? The Mac products are those products that they make that you don't think you need, and then when you have them, you can't live without them, right? I love that. I love that comment, even though I think I'm butchering it. The Bad Batch was a show that I didn't realize that I needed, but now I'm so glad that it's here. What a fantastic bit of Star Wars storytelling. Now, I haven't spent enough time on it yet to really begin to break down what it was for me that resonated. I'll share with you some of my thoughts of the things that I liked in the show, but there is something about The Bad Batch in this opening special, this little mini movie, and then Friday's half-hour episode that it's resonating with the fandom. I have been, watching online and Twitter and comments from friends, hardcore fans, filthy casuals, as my buddies over at Knights of Vader would say. And there seems to be nothing but, and listening to podcasts, there seems to be nothing but universal praise for The Bad Batch, including a few of you who actually emailed in before this week's show about The Bad Batch that I'll share with you with listener feedback. And this is, and you can say, well, it's an offshoot of the Clone Wars, and people like the Clone Wars. It's like, oh yeah, but you know what? I didn't hear any of this type of hype around those 4 episodes of The Bad Batch, nor did I really enjoy those 4 episodes of The Bad Batch in Clone Wars Season 7 nearly as much as I've enjoyed these 2 episodes of The Bad Batch. So let's dive into a bit of it, right? Because I love it when we get entertainment that we never knew that we wanted until we watched it. And maybe there were those of you that really liked The Bad Batch from those opening seasons in the Clone Wars, and so your expectations were completely met. I went into this going, it's new Star Wars. I love the Clone Wars. Let's watch this and see what it is. But I had no affinity for these altered clones, and this first episode just really blew me away and instantly made me a fan. And I usually gauge that based off of my desire to want Clone Wars toys, or Star Wars toys, and I want all the Bad Batch stuff now. I want the Black Series figures, and I'm going to pre-order the Lego set because my 14-year-old wants it, but really I just want it. So let's get into this. It was really just a great bit of storytelling. I felt like the writers of this show, and I know Dave Filoni created it, but I believe there are different writers and directors for the Bad Batch series, of which we're getting 16 episodes, and I'm so thankful that we are. It really seems like they kind of reset the Bad Batch. These characters are very definitive in what each of them do and they represent. They created a bit of intrigue, and one of the biggest things for me was this addition of this new female young character in Omega, who I just immediately gravitated towards and had a fandom and an emotional reaction to it that was completely unexpected right out of the gate. They've created this really, really endearing character. Now, there is a formula developing within the storytelling, and I'll get into that a little bit later on. I don't have an issue with it, but I am going to identify it because we have now several pieces of Star Wars content that are kind of riffing off the same formula. So we'll get a little bit more into this later on. I like the fact that we are getting into this particular gap in time. I've mentioned many times on the show that I want to go forward in the timeline. If I had my way, I would want to see more content made post the rise of Skywalker. I want to go forward, and I'm still really holding out that Rogue Squadron is going to be placed in that timeline, lending credence to what Kathleen Kennedy said during that announcement. But that being said, I'm now kind of excited that we're beginning to step into some entertainment in the gap between the rise of Skywalker and then, of course, Solo and Rogue One. We're kind of experiencing the same thing, right, when it comes to the post Return of the Jedi going into The Mandalorian, right? A very similar sort of galaxy in flux, but with a different vibe. Here, in this particular timeline, you still have the remnants of the Republic, so you still have that sort of austerity that's there, while the Empire transitions from the Republic into the Empire. And the storytelling with the Bad Batch and kind of going on this journey of these particular clones who, thankfully, spoiler alert, and we will be talking spoilers on the show, didn't end up succumbing to Order 66, and obviously the problems that arose for Crosshair, okay, which is certainly going to be a part of the story. And then getting Omega and the mystery surrounding this character that we get to sort of use as, and it's always it's always a great storytelling. A great piece of storytelling is when they go and they add this character that basically represents us as the viewer. So we're kind of Omega now, getting to go along with the Bad Batch on these adventures, and to the point where in Friday's episode, and again we're going to be talking spoilers, like I was genuinely getting worried that Omega was going to go off with Cut and his family, and knowing full well they weren't going to do that, but you can't help but wonder, because I had a similar feeling with Grogu in Mandalorian Season 1, that we got introduced to this character, but then the Mando was going to deliver him off and would not be partnered with him for the rest of the series, which, of course, again, in hindsight, that was never going to happen. But at the beginning, really wanting to see more of Grogu than just, Chilota or Baby Yoda, that concern that, we're not going to see him anymore, and then finding out that this is what the story was all about. And this is that repeat storytelling that Disney's been doing, and again, we'll get back to that in just a bit. But this idea of a galaxy in flux really kind of has me excited right now, even though it's not my preferred wanting to move forward in the timeline. I'll take it, because the storytelling is just that entertaining. Plus, what it could mean for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, because the Obi-Wan Kenobi live-action show won't be too far removed from this. And it'll be very interesting to see now that Disney has another hit on their hands, because it really is. I mean, I haven't seen the streaming numbers, obviously, but just based off of what I've been hearing within the fandom, I haven't heard anybody that didn't like the Bad Batch, and most of the commentary that I've heard from people are like mine, going, wow, that really, really blew me away. The pacing was spot on for that opening 75-minute episode that we got on Star Wars Day. It was enjoyable from the start. Being a huge Rebels fan myself, right? And even if you're not, the storytelling at the start of the show was really, really emotional. But getting the backstory on Kanan, back when he was Caleb Dune, seeing another point of view on Order 66. Again, the storytelling is just plain great. And it really does add more weight, more context, and, dare I say it, more value to the prequels. Going back now and watching the prequels with all of this added material surrounding it has really enhanced my enjoyment of watching those films, beyond the fact that I already really do enjoy those films. As I mentioned earlier, we're getting 16 episodes of The Bad Batch, and I'm just along for the rise. I do for the ride. So here's the repeat storytelling that I wanted to talk about briefly. I do find it a little interesting, and I'm sure it's not lost on the content creators. But with the Clone Wars, now, albeit that was a long time ago now, right? So it's not like we just got this story. But in the Clone Wars series, it started off with, Snips and Sky Guy. It started off with this introduction of Ahsoka finding out that Anakin had a Padawan, and it was this young female, and then seeing their relationship grow, which obviously turned into Ahsoka being one of the most popular characters, certainly one of the, post-original trilogy, prequel trilogy, most popular characters to ever come out of Star Wars. Then we get this sort of similar storytelling in The Mandalorian, right? It's different enough, but, The Mandalorian tracks down Grogu and ends up eventually, spoiler alert, handing him off to Luke Skywalker. And now, once again, we have another young character who is along for the ride with this group in the Bad Batch. This is not a complaint by any stretch. It's a formula that absolutely works, and I'm glad that it works. Be that as it may, it is a formula that they've kind of repeated 3 times now. So, I'm just as curious as everybody else is about where Omega is going at this point in time. The one question that I always have when we have characters that come out of nowhere in the middle of storytelling that we've received is, okay, where did they go? It's the same question that I had when we met Ahsoka. It's the same question that I have and will still have for Grogu now that he's off with Luke. It's the same question I have for the Mandalorian himself. Right, where does the Mandalorian end up by the time of the sequel trilogy? And now, way back deep into the canon, we have this new clone character, Omega. A lot of speculation around who she could be. At the moment, all we know is she's a clone. We know that the Kaminoans are clearly doing something or did something special with her. I know there was some talk about her potentially being a Palpatine clone, and I don't believe that's the case. I think that we know that that on Kamino that they alter the clones. Boba Fett was a direct clone of Jango, whereas the regular clones were genetically altered, right, to make them more docile than the original host. So I think at this point we can just assume that perhaps Omega is also a clone of Jango, but they decided to change her gender. I am thinking along the same lines as a lot of other people that she might be Force sensitive, so maybe they gave her some M blood, as they're referring to it now, instead of saying midichlorians, right? Which I think is a pretty smart move, right? Kind of, the calling it, the M count in the blood, like they did in The Mandalorian, when the Doctor needed more, right? In that second season episode, I chuckled a little bit when they called it the M count in his blood or M blood or whatever. That being said, I do kind of dig the rationale that it allows those that do the eye roll over midichlorians to avoid doing that by naming it something else. Kind of going, oh, okay, you're not calling it midichlorians. You say midichlorians, and a lot of people go and roll their eyes. You say M count or M blood, everybody knows what you're talking about, but it's less of an eye roll. There does seem to be universal praise for the Bad Batch, as I mentioned, just as there was for The Mandalorian, and just as there was for Clone Wars Season 7. The new content that Disney and Lucasfilm is bringing out is breeding positive reactions. Rogue One, universally praised, didn't have any of the main Skywalker characters for the most part. Solo didn't do well at the box office. I think most people agree the reason it didn't do well was just that they tried this experiment of putting a Star Wars movie 6 months after the last Star Wars movie like Marvel, and it didn't work for an abundance of reasons. I think part of it too happens to be the storytelling in and of itself. I don't think there were a lot of people like myself that were clamoring for a Solo solo movie, a solo Han Solo movie, even though I love that film, and just like everybody else after going and watching it, going, hey, that's great, and then people that avoid in the theater go and watch it, hey, that's great. My point is, there's something to be said of the Disney-era Star Wars content that doesn't have any of the original trilogy characters in it. And to me, it's interesting when you think about what would have happened with the sequel trilogy. And again, this is something I don't do very often, but what would have happened with the sequel trilogy had there not been the original characters in them? I mean, would you even have been able to sort of get away with Palpatine coming back at the end? Let's just say if it timed out to the point where Luke, Han, and Leia just weren't around anymore, and so we didn't even get them in the story. I'm curious what the reaction would have been. We'll probably get an answer to that because I do believe that there will eventually be a 10, 11, and 12 in the saga. It only makes sense. And based off of sort of what I'm laying out here and what Disney knows better than I do, and that is these new stories, regardless of where they are in the timeline, that are based off of brand new characters that nobody has any preconceived notions about, tend to really thrive and do well. And all of it just has me excited knowing the Star Wars is alive and well and not going anywhere. If they can pump out content like The Bad Batch, which is kind of an oddball Star Wars thing. You're not really connected to the Force in any way. There is no direct attachment to the major Star Wars saga line. You're talking about clone troopers, and we've gotten years of clone trooper storytelling, and you say you're going to bring about this show with these 4 or 5 defective clone troopers who have special abilities because of their defects, and people are going to love it. And again, I was looking forward to the show, but not excited about it. And I'll be damned if they didn't pull off and create an amazing piece of entertainment that has me clamoring for Friday now, more so than anything, any week that I was watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Not that I'm comparing Marvel to Star Wars. So, hat tip to everybody involved, man. I mean, look, for as much nonsense and negative garbage that's out there on the internet about Star Wars, the reality is, the biggest reason why the saga films and episodes 7, 8, and 9 got so much controversy, received so much controversy and backlash, especially The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, it's still just because of those connections to so many of us who have been around the fandom for so long. Not me personally, I loved them, but for a lot of people that grew up on these movies, they just couldn't get past the decisions made by J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson about those original trilogy characters. And if The Mandalorian, Season 7 of The Clone Wars, and The Bad Batch are any proof, when you don't have those preconceived notions and you do just good storytelling in the Star Wars universe, it's a recipe for success. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears, talk briefly about some set photos that have leaked online.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
That's still just awful, isn't it? It really is bad. So if you go to Reddit and the Reddit leaks page on Star Wars, if you're interested, and I will say there's nothing too exciting here. It's something we haven't seen before if you've watched Rogue One, but there is a ton of leaks on Reddit for the Cassian Andor live action show, which filming is in full swing. A lot of location filming. You can see shore troopers, somebody that actually looked like Palpatine, although I doubt that it was. A lot of candid behind the scenes photos of Diego Luna playing Cassian Andor. I'm excited again for this era because of what Bad Batch has brought, knowing that this is most likely going to be pre-Solo and we're going to be in the middle of this timeline. Possible connections to the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, the ability to introduce characters that we're being introduced to now, right? In the Bad Batch, or what we end up getting in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. No, I'm more excited now for Andor than I was before, and I have more confidence than ever in the storytelling of the content creators right now. I think they're doing a fantastic job. And again, I'm really, really excited for all this content coming out because I do think that they've landed on something here with these new characters that aren't attached to the original trilogy directly. And I'm personally of the opinion that we are in for some amazing storytelling. And again, Andor's not a show that I was clamoring for, but based off of what we've been getting, I'm really, really excited for it now. All right, let's switch gears again.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
So even though I played a clip from The Last Jedi, I want to talk just briefly about The Force Awakens. I had to have some mouth surgery this week. I had a 2-year-old root canal. Sounds like it's a child. My 2-year-old root canal. No, I had a root canal that was done on several of them. Not several. A few of my teeth 2 years ago, back in 2018. And I got an infection, so they had to go in and they had to do some minor surgery on Friday. Anyway, Star Wars is my comfort food. So I hadn't sat down and watched The Force Awakens in a bit, right? It's probably been a couple of months. And just sat down, put it on, put the phone off to the side, like I try to do more often now, and just went on for the ride. That is a real, J.J. Abrams, and this is all I wanted to say about it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to dive into listener feedback, but J.J. Abrams really did a phenomenal job with that film. It's derivative in a lot of ways. Going back to the comment I made before, I'm curious what the movie would have been like without any of the original trilogy characters. And, by and large, Han and Leia didn't. I mean, Han had a pretty big role in the film. And Leia had her part too, but it really was about those new main characters. But The Force Awakens really did, in my opinion, capture that simplicity in storytelling that George Lucas gave us with A New Hope, combined with the modern aesthetics and the special effects and the pacing that we have come to expect when we go to see an action science fiction film in theater, or just making it easier, a Star Wars film. There is a simplicity in The Force Awakens that really, really works well. It is just a fun adventure. It's not as grandiose in scope as the prequels are, but it wasn't supposed to be that. The one time that we actually go to the Republic, we're there for a very brief moment before Starkiller Base goes and blows it up. But I'm kind of okay with that. For the same reason that I'm okay that we didn't really see what Alderaan was in A New Hope, just based off the technology of the day. George Lucas didn't have the ability to do massive CGI shots of Alderaan as the Death Star laser comes down and laid waste to it, right? The way that J.J. Abrams did in the Force Awakens. So getting that little bit in The Force Awakens was absolutely enough to create the impact needed for the storytelling. But it's just a really, really enjoyable film. And it sets the stage perfectly for the movies that followed that I love dearly, and I know many of you listening love dearly, apart from those that have problems with either one, and that's cool. But I just wanted to take a moment and talk just a bit about, The Force Awakens, because it doesn't get talked about that much anymore in the larger fandom, obviously, simply because The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker were so controversial. But, that will always be a film that will be an easy one to throw on when I'm not exactly sure what I'm in the mood for when it comes to my Star Wars watching. The Force Awakens is that one where, that's going to feed me just fine, so I'm going to put it on just like I did this past weekend. And a movie that I've seen 100+ times at this point in time is still just as enjoyable, if not, in certain ways, more enjoyable than it was the first time that I saw it.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment on YouTube if you want to be a part of listener feedback. Got a couple of YouTubes and YouTube messages and emails this week I want to share with you. First one, and you're all friends of the show, but first one comes from Irene Davis, who writes this: emphatic, factual, down-to-earth, positive. Someone that loves Star Wars, all of it, encouraging his own person. Healer of division rather than spreading hate. Are you talking about me? Enjoy your podcast tremendously. Thank you, Irene. That's really, really kind of you to say. Real Star Wars fans don't spread hate! Exclamation point. Twice. Let's keep up the good positive work and be a healer rather than divisive. May the force be with you, John, from the UK. As always, tremendous podcast. Thank you so much, Irene. I really do appreciate it. Those are really kind words. Owen Dowd. JJ's comments are really telling, going back to last week's episode. If you still think that these movies were made only to make money, I would say that they're wrong. Everyone was just being genuine. It's not a competition. They hired directors and writers that actually care about the franchise and the story. Also, to me, Palpatine coming back is just like the 1980 fantasy films. He is an evil wizard emperor that knows more about things than our main cast. If you treat the franchise as what it actually is, a space fantasy, this is all well and good. I feel like some sci-fi fans think that it has to all make sense in a scientific way. I don't know. Thanks for the show, John. Hope you have a nice week. Thank you, Owen. I've repeatedly made these comments, but it's relevant to what Owen was saying. It really, a lot of all of this and the commentary that we get and the negativity is just playing off of the dynamic that we have as a society to be able to speak to each other at any moment's notice on social networking. I'm convinced at this point in time that that we humans were not designed to have the ability to communicate with each other on such a mass scale. I think we do a lot better when we are not connected in that way, apart from the people that are around us and the effort that we have to make to reach out to people, rather than being able to just type a text or send a tweet or put up a Facebook post or a Facebook message, right? There's a lot of positivity that can come out of it. But what we've seen in fandoms, not just Star Wars, is this ability to just shotgun your views whenever and wherever you like, where before, prior to social networking, those are normally reserved for conversations between you and your friends or family. And I think a lot of times people feel bad when they like something, but they see a whole bunch of people that don't like it, and it ends up sort of shifting and changing views. If you're able to look beyond that, and I hope most people are, it's not a big deal. You can just dismiss it and push it off to the side. But it's not an easy thing if you're not used to it. And it can be, very daunting for as much as fandoms are, and drags everybody down. And it's the world that we live in. But I'll go back on a positive note, and I think it really is, though, a testament to the storytelling that we've received in The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch, and how much universal praise both of those pieces of Star Wars entertainment have received, even with the fact that people can shotgun their emotions and feelings. It seems like everybody really likes those, and so that's a cool thing. Game Station 3 says this, and thank you for writing in. It's like people spent too much time on how much Luke changed between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy for the bad, and how upset they were about it, and too little time as to how much he changed for the good by the end of it. And I totally agree. As I mentioned on last week's show, talking about the criticisms that The Last Jedi has received, and those that were very upset by Luke's character and where he was at the start of the film, were so upset by that it seemed to overshadow what Luke became at the end of the film, which, in my opinion, was the version that most people wanted, right? He did the most Jedi of Jedi things by teleporting himself via the Force to Crate, being passive and engaging Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, without actually engaging him. So thank you for the comment, Game Station 3. Brian Martin wrote in, and I'm going to save Brian's for next week because I want to spend a little bit more time on this. But he asked, could you please do an episode comparing Dark Empire and The Rise of Skywalker as two stories set in different continuities that both have Palpatine's resurrection as the big plot point? I will, and I'll address this on next week's show, Brian, because it's a really interesting topic. I really enjoy Dark Empire, and as I've said, The Rise of Skywalker is currently my go-to watch for Star Wars and my favorite Star Wars film at the moment. That being said, it shares a lot of connectivity with the Dark Empire. So we'll cover that on next week's show when we've got a little bit more time. All right, Howard Kemple, friend of the show, writes in, just watched the second installment of The Bad Batch, and I'm loving it. The second episode was very heartfelt, and it was cool to see them all bring back other characters like Cut. Can't wait to continue watching. But just like TV when I was a kid, you have to wait until next week to find out. As always, thank you for the podcast and the positivity. No, I completely agree, Howard. And there was a lot of emotion in that second episode. It wasn't quite as exciting as the first one, right? But that's okay. They don't always have to be. But we're telling a longer story here. And even with that being said, it was still an incredibly entertaining episode. And we got a Nexu in it. That was rad. Have we seen Nexus in animation before then? Right? The mean multi-eyed space kitties. They was scary. It was freaking me out. Tore up Padme in the Geonosian arena. Tore off her shirt and cut her back. It was nasty. All right. Thank you, Howard. I appreciate the email. All right. Ben writes this. John, I was not excited for Bad Batch. I was ready to move on from the Clone Wars, and then I watched the premiere, and holy cow, I liked it. I like how they added the Kanan Jarrus storyline. I have a feeling that could come up more in the series. I liked how they gave a slight insight in the Kaminoans. They made a clone for themselves. My oldest son, 10, thinks Omega is a Jedi. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it would be an interesting twist. Could Kamino cloning tie into the cloning that Darth Sidious was trying to do on Exegol? Will we see the first attempts of Darth Sidious experimenting with cloning? When I saw Crosshair at the end in black, I immediately thought Shadow Trooper. Is Crosshair the prototype for the Shadow Troopers? Yeah, no, I thought the same thing. My son actually said Death Trooper because they had the green on there. But no, I saw the same thing. Could be a precursor. So many random and interesting storylines can come out of this series. I look forward to the weeks to come. Where are you reading the Darth Vader comics? Are you doing this electronically, or are you finding them in the library? I have never read the comics. I didn't think they would really advance the storyline that much compared to the books, but based on what you read last week, now I want to take a look at them. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, look, if you go online and search for Darth Vader number 11, because that's what I was talking about last week, the one where he goes to Exegol that I was really excited about. If you search for Darth Vader on Darth Vader number 11 online through Google, you can find where you can go get the digital version online and find it online. That's what I ended up doing, because it's tough to go track down comic books. So I prefer to have a physical copy. Like I mentioned, I got my I didn't. I got the graphic novel version of The Rise of Skywalker. It actually I bought it off Amazon, and it actually arrived on Star Wars Day. Really cool, and nothing, earth-shatteringly different than the movie itself. The artwork is really interesting, though, very unexpected. To the point where I first looked at it, I went, wow, it was cool artwork, but it didn't seem to fall in line with what you typically would expect with Star Wars comics. But be that as it may, it's really unique, and I'm glad that I have it. Kind of rounds out my collection of the Rise of Skywalker material. All right, and that wraps up the show this week. I'd love to hear from you and get your further thoughts on The Bad Batch as we head into another episode next week. And again, your expectations on May 4th. Did you have a good Star Wars day? Were you expecting more than what we got? Were you happy with what we got? I want some movie news to chew on. That's what I'm waiting for. So that was probably I want to say I was disappointed, but that's the one thing that I was really hoping for. I was hoping for maybe some further details on Rogue Squadron or the other films that are in the works, or Taika Waititi's movie or something. But apparently we will have to wait. But because we got The Bad Batch, I'm okay with doing that. All right, have yourself a fantastic week. Remember, if you want to support My Nerd World and the Star Wars podcast, I do not do Patreon. Maybe I should. I don't know, but I don't. If you want to support the show, though, and you are a reader, I would encourage you to go, if you haven't done it already, and thank you to everybody who has. If you haven't done it already, go and check out my science fiction space opera series called Embark. 5 books available now in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. The audiobook for The Rocket Queen, which is book 5, just came out on Star Wars Day. So, if you've been waiting for the audiobook for The Rocket Queen, it is now available. If you go to mynerdworld.net, you can find a link there to Amazon, or just go to amazon.com and search for Jon, Jon Justice, and Embark, and the entire series will pop up. Still in the process of writing book 6. As a matter of fact, I am staring at the file right now on my computer. I can see it right there. I am, let's see, I can tell you how many words I am. I'm 57,721 words in. I wanted to be farther, but, mouth surgeries and stuff like that have kept me from my keyboard. And the full-time job. So, still hammering away on book 6, and still planning on having book 6 and 7 out to round out this second trilogy in the Embark series by the end of the year. So, go get yourself caught up on the series. Jon, Jon Justice on Amazon. These are great for all ages, written for adults, but can be read and enjoyed by kids as young as 11 or 12, and sort of cursing, and they're family friendly. They're family friendly is what I'm trying to say. Amazon.com, Jon, Jon Justice. I'm really selling my books, aren't I? I'm doing a fantastic job selling my amazing adventure tales right now. Not really in the least bit. All right, that's it. I got to go get ready for the rest of my day, which includes NASCAR watching this afternoon, which I'm super excited about. So have yourself a fantastic week, and I hope wherever you are safe, you are happy, and you are healthy, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.